Hi, and welcome to Boise State in the Community. I'm your host, Bryson Schmitz, and here at Boise State in the Community, we're more than just a class. We're a service learning class where each week we get the amazing opportunity to bring in guests from around our community here at Boise State. Our guest this week just recently got her PhD, and she also is just a huge outdoors lover and loves it so much that she even teaches a class here at Boise State. Please welcome Dr. Mari Rice. How are you doing tonight?
Great, thank you.
Good, good. So just first off, I want to say congratulations on the PhD. That's awesome. And
thank you.
Just what does it take to get a PhD?
It takes a tremendous amount of work and dedication.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be working at BSU and do it slowly while I was working here. So it's taken me about 5 years to complete while working full time.
Oh,
and
wow.
I have a family, so it's a lot of late nights and early mornings, but it's been a good journey now that it's over.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you get it in, and what kind of stuff did you study and all that?
Yeah, I got a PhD in education, science education, and the emphasis was actually using my environmental studies classes here at BSU and looking at how students were impacted by service learning. So in my classes, I do an experiential type of learning like this class. And I wanted to see what the students were getting from that experience in terms of course content, and then also if doing that hands-on work would make them feel differently about the environment and their love of the outdoors.
So what do the class here you teach that at Boise State with the service learning class, what class is it, and what do you do? Who do you work with and all that and that?
Yeah, the class I teach is called Introduction to Environmental Studies. So it's one of the general education foundations of natural science classes. The class is, I have around 100 students each semester that are doing the service learning aspect to the class. And they are in every semester about 6 agencies around the community that focus on the environment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us about maybe a couple of those agencies and what your students do when they're working with them?
Yeah, so this semester I have 6 agencies I've partnered with. A couple of the agencies focus on habitat restoration and land use. So the students are working with fish and game. And we've had a lot of wildfires in the last few years, like the Table Rock area. There was a big fire a couple years ago, and so the students are actually going out and replanting sagebrush, little baby sagebrush about this big. And they also collect seeds from sagebrush that made it through the fire. And they'll take the seeds and they'll take them to a nursery by Lucky Peak and grow them into sagebrush about this big for the fall, and then we'll plant those again.
Dang.
Try to restore the foothills.
That's awesome. Cool. So that was, you said fish and game? That's
fish and game, and then the students also work with open space.
Okay.
That's part of Boise, city of Boise foothills. And so they do a lot of planting there too. And they're trying to pull out invasive weeds in the foothills and replace those with native plants.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of digging and planting. It's really hands-on work.
That's awesome. What kind of, so you say native plants, so like what kind of plants are you guys mainly planting out there?
Primarily, they're planting a lot of sagebrush.
Oh, okay.
Some rabbit brush. They also, along stream banks, will plant willows.
Oh, okay.
Where it's eroded, the willows will hold the soil in place.
Yeah.
So they do a lot of that.
Nice. So fish and game, open space. Is there a couple more you said?
Yeah.
You guys work with?
Yeah, we have 4 others. Another big project is with the Boise Urban Garden School. Okay. That's sponsored by the city of Boise. It's a garden that's dedicated to education. So in the summer, there are hundreds of kids that go to this garden and they learn how to plant and cook. But during the fall and spring, my students are out there prepping everything. And in the fall, they're out cleaning up. So they'll compost, they get the beds ready, they plant the lettuce and spinach and get ready for the kids to come in the summer.
That's awesome. That's super fun. Yeah. So do you guys plant, and then is it just your students out there? Are they working with other members from around the community or kids or?
They are, and so in most of the projects, that's one of their favorite aspects is that they get to work with the community.
Okay.
When they go out with Fish and Game, there may be 10 students from Boise State and another 20 from around the community. A lot of people who are retired love to volunteer in their spare time, and so they'll have this crew of people from all different ages, sometimes Boy Scout troops, Girl Scout troops as well, planting with them, and so they can kind of get to know each other.
Yeah.
And then the garden project is great because they have a community garden that's next to the kids' garden, and so people will come to their plots every week.
Yeah.
And so the students get to know those families that are there. Some of them are refugee families that are growing interesting different types of fruits and vegetables, so they can share their knowledge.
Yeah. Have you seen a lot of like connections or friendships blossom between your students and like these families that you're working with?
I would say I haven't been out there enough to really say, but they always, when we come back and make posters about what they did in the service learning project and they present them, they always bring it up how much they enjoyed working with these other community members.
Yeah.
And they also really talk about how they enjoyed working with each other. So that's one of the things I love about service learning is that it allows the students in the classroom. Sometimes you're not always able to like get to know your classmates, but in that setting they really bond.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool. So you love the outdoors, obviously. That's why you teach environmental studies. Basically, what would you say are some of your favorite activities and just hobbies that you like to do outside?
Well, I really love to do anything outside.
Yeah.
Those are all my favorite things. I love running with my dog. I love hiking in the foothills, mountain biking. I'm a very big skier.
Oh, nice.
I love skiing, rafting, backpacking. Oh, I'm a gardener. I love gardening.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
these projects with like the community garden and all that, that's super. That's cool.
Yeah, definitely from my own interest area.
Yeah, yeah. Did you say there's also a group of them doing the garden? There's a garden on campus too?
Yeah, there's a small project that's working on starting a garden on campus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right now they're working to draft out some plans. It's really in the initial stages, so hopefully in future semesters we'll hopefully get to be involved in actually creating it. Right now they're doing more of the design.
Oh, okay.
And that would be a garden that students could access and go get fresh produce in the fall, learn gardening skills.
Do you know where it would be located? Do you have?
I'm not really
an
sure
idea?
at this
Not
point.
sure?
Yeah. I can't wait to find out. They're going to be presenting in a couple weeks, so I'll find out
That's awesome.
more about
That's
it.
awesome. So, you've been teaching here for a while at Boise State. Where did you grow up, and what made you love the outdoors so much?
Yeah, I kind of grew up all over the place. I moved around a lot when I was a kid, and I mostly finished out high school in Oregon, and I went to University of Oregon. And Oregon is just ripe with outdoors.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it
So there wasn't where I grew up, there wasn't a lot to do, but I had some hills right by my house, and the coast was fairly close by. So I think just being able to spend extra time outside really inspired me.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's really cool. So going back to this class that you're teaching right now, so
Yeah.
your PhD, you got it to basically see how this work is affecting your students, correct? What would you say is like the biggest change or biggest thing that you see your students from the beginning of the semester to the end?
Yeah, I think that I see because I teach general education, and frankly, I would say 2/3 of the students of the class, students will come to the class because they're interested in outdoors, or they come to the class because they need a non-lab Foundations of Natural Science class, and they may not have any interest at all. They just think it's easier than chemistry or something.
Yeah.
So my goal in teaching that and having service learning is to get people to see that they have a role in the environment, and that there are a lot of environmental issues in our local community that they can be involved with. So my main thing that I really love from my students to see them change is to see them take this class and apply service learning in the class and kind of change their own lives in terms of how they view
their own
nature.
perspective. Yeah. So what would you say are some of the biggest environmental issues that you see like around here in Boise?
We have, I would say, that some of the bigger issues that we're facing. One of them is related to the urban growth that we're seeing, a lack of transportation and some of those pressures with urban growth. Air quality will be impacted, and that's a big one. The wildfire season is a really major environmental issue that we see with almost every year we have a fire, whether it's here or in Canada or California, we're getting the smoke, and it's affecting our air quality and also our habitat around us. So that's one of the bigger ones.
So we're actually going to take a quick break real quick, but when we come back, we are going to hear about maybe a couple more environmental issues around here that we are working on, and also about a summer class that Dr. Mari Rice teaches. You've been watching Boise State in the Community. We'll be right back.
Looking at the big blue sky, thinking whether you and I will ever fall in love. I know for me it'll be so.
Welcome back to Boise State in the Community here on BTV. I'm your host, Bryson Schmitz, and we were just talking to Dr. Rice here about some of the biggest environmental issues that she's noticed around the community. And so you mentioned wildfires. Is there any more that are really, just that you really notice on a day-to-day basis?
I think one of the ones that we're going to feel in the future a little bit more that maybe we don't feel it now is water use.
Okay.
We have a lot of water availability in our valley, but with the growth that's coming in and the amount of agricultural production that we see here, it creates a lot of water pollution. And there are a lot of challenges related to not only the amount of water we use, we're one of the highest per capita water users in the nation, Idaho, but also water quality, because there's not very much regulation of water.
Yeah.
Especially from the agricultural sector. So that I think will become a bigger issue in the future.
Gotcha. Thank you. So I just want to know how or what got you into teaching service learning?
Yeah, I finished my undergrad and I got a degree in Spanish and International Studies, totally away from environmental studies. And when I went to the workforce and I did AmeriCorps, and I ended up working for a youth corps, and they were always working outside, and I realized I was really actually most passionate about environmental issues. And so I went back to school and got a master's in environmental studies and in University of Montana, which is a great outdoor mecca. And then I was working for environmental education, teaching outdoor education, and I taught quite a few field courses where I had college students, and we'd actually have the class out in the field, like in southern Utah, and we'd be camping, and we'd be doing the class reading out of this reader. And I just had such an amazing time with educating that way. So when I ended up coming back into the traditional classroom later, I just could not leave that part. I needed to have the experiential education part in the traditional classroom too. And so I always teach with some aspect of service learning or community engagement, or at least we're outside doing a field trip or something. I just can't really leave that. I think it's so valuable to students to have that hands-on experience and to connect with each other and also just to see how does this relate to my life? Because if you're just taking a class and it has no relevance to you, what's the point, really?
Yeah. So it's a very hands-on class, like you said. Is there any other, or how else do you teach in that class besides the service learning aspect? What other kind of projects or things do you guys do in your class?
In that class? Yeah, it's a really large class, so that's very limiting in the sense, there's things I would, in a smaller class that we could do, but in that class, some of the things that we do, I try to bring the service learning back into some of the assignments. So the students will do things like they're creating a giant reflection poster of their service experience in a team and sharing that. We do a final project where they research a topic, and I ask them to pick something from their service learning to research. So maybe they'll research cheatgrass, which is a weed, and see how it's affecting the fire cycle, or they might research composting, for example, if they were at the garden project. And then they create some infographics and write about that. So I try in my classes to do like a lot of hands-on learning and then try to make the assignments, a lot of them related to service learning. Yeah,
that's awesome. And do your kids, and most of the kids in the class just love working out in the community and just altogether love working with each other and just being that group and knowing that they're making a change? Is that something that you can tell, that you can see in them, that they just love doing it?
I think increasingly, yes. I've had in the past when I first started doing it, I would say less, but I've learned over time how to work with our community partners to make the project a little bit better for the students and to build that community for them out there. And then I have to bring that back into the classroom. So as long as I'm bridging that gap for them, where we're not just learning about a feedback loop and then they're out in the project and they're not related, I'm trying to always make sure that the community partner and myself are connecting those two. That's really important for the students. I wouldn't say that every student in the class loves it. I mean that would be a miracle. But yeah, I think a good portion of them really do enjoy that aspect.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Do you have any other classes that you teach? Like, do you have a summer class or?
Yeah, I teach, I have taught quite a bit for university foundations. I've taught UF 200 and I have a UF 100 class right now that we'll offer again in the spring, and it's called Talkin' Trash, and it's
Wow.
it looks at the waste management, recycling, composting system. It's a fairly new class. And then this summer I'm going to be teaching a field course. So it's called Investigate Boise, and we're going to be going all around Boise learning about sustainability in the city. We'll visit a lot of sustainable sites, like we'll go to the wastewater treatment plant. There's a big solar energy development. We'll visit that. We'll visit some sustainable businesses, places like that.
Yeah, that's cool. And so
Yeah.
is that also, so that's a service learning class as well?
Yeah, the
kinda?
Investigate Boise program is part of urban studies,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's a field course.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. So obviously you love the environment and protecting it. What would you say in the future is, like, if we didn't change a thing that we do right now, what's going to happen to our world in your eyes? Just certain aspects of it, like what you're working with in your classes and.
Yeah, sometimes my class I feel like the topics in the class are pretty heavy. If we talk about climate change, it's a very heavy issue. Or if I start talking about water pollution or ocean pollution, some of these issues are really heavy for the students. And it seems like there's not a way out or way forward. So in the class, I do try to always incorporate, here's what you can do, here's some solutions that we can work towards globally, and here are the pathways that we need to move forward to get there. Because these problems are really daunting, and I feel, sometimes I try not to feel hopeless. I try to use my students, they're the future, to make me excited about the potential for these problems to be addressed.
Yeah. So would you say in the future, academically wise, then, that it's a good idea to almost require courses like environmental studies and just making us all aware of what's going on around us?
That would be amazing. I think that would be great if all students, particularly at the younger ages, starting pretty young, I would say if they incorporated environmental studies to the elementary school level, that would be a path that I think would lead to future change.
Yeah.
And also just, I think at the college level, trying to get people to see that environmental issue is not just about the environment, it's also about social needs and economic needs. It's all integrated.
Yeah. That's very true. So, what would you say is like what is the one thing in the environment that you are the most passionate about, and that you could, if you could change it today with a snap of the finger, you would?
One thing.
One
Wow.
thing. One of the problems. I know there's a lot.
So many
but
problems.
Just that one thing that really hits close to home for you.
Yeah, I mean, climate change is is one that I worry about with my own kids, thinking about the future, because it snowballs and affects, like I'm very passionate about water and agriculture. Those are issues I work closely on, but they're affected by climate change. And so is biodiversity, species diversity. So really, I think that because that issue affects so many other issues, it's for me the most concerning.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So, if you were given $1 million grant and you could do anything in the world with it, but on one condition, you had to tell me right here, right now, what would it be? What would you do with the money?
$1 million. I probably would put it into, again, teaching the younger generations. I probably would pump a lot of funds into educating young people.
Yeah, like when you say starting at the elementary level,
Yeah.
what do you think is like the best thing to start out by teaching them? Like,
Well, increasingly in our technological world, I mean, just exposure to the outdoors and nature at a young age for some of these kids that don't get those opportunities would be a great way forward. If one of the projects I didn't talk about earlier is the Bogus Basin Snow School that we have some students volunteering at this semester. And they're taking kids, a lot of kids in the Treasure Valley that have never been to Bogus or seen snow before, ever.
Yeah.
And they're bringing them out to see where their water comes from. And they're teaching them about snow and the properties of snow and why that's important.
Yeah.
So they're pretty young at that age, giving them opportunities like that, hands-on opportunities to experience nature and feel it and play in it. You know, they're penguins sliding down the hill and they're going in an igloo.
Yeah.
I think that's really
Yeah, so hopefully
great.
when they grow up, they'll already want to help fix the environment and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show with us tonight. And I'd also like to thank my director, Courtney Guerrero, and her crew, my producer, Kyla Edding, and my studio manager, Bryce Cornwell. And join us next show as Chloe Scott talks to us about an exciting new Columbia Exchange program. This has been Boise State in the Community on BTV, and we'll see you next time.